How did the streets look like?
Yeah. Well, grey, all the paint leaving, falling out, down. On many houses there were scaffoldings which were meant to protect people or pedestrians against things which were falling from the houses because there was very little maintenance. There was one pub for every 10 which exists now. They were overcrowded. I don't to speak about how the toilets were. Vegetable shops in winter, potatoes, apples. In the 80s there were already apples because some private produce was.
Yes.
There may be carrots, occasionally onions, and once in a month for half a day there were oranges. There were long queues.
First, I would like to ask you. You said you were not in Prague.
Well, I was in Prague.
The night when the tanks arrived.
Well,
when the tanks arrived.
No, I was in Slovakia.
Right.
Wedding trip.
I see. And how did you find out about?
It's interesting. It was a sporting excursion in the low Tatras in Slovakia. These are hills, and we lived in a tent. And in the morning, late in the night or early in the morning, I heard a lot of noise of planes. And nobody knew about anything, and I said, well, this looks like somebody would invade us. And I meant it half as a joke, but morning, soon afterwards, we had a public radio, public announcement, because there was some camp near to that, and they sent a radio to broadcast the news, and there was already the proclamation of the Central Committee of the party also. So it was clear. My feeling, well, that day it's mixture, but later I was relatively optimistic, not because of Russians, but because of the fact that our people were enormously cooperative. They helped each other. They were unified in the opposition to the Soviet invasion, and I believe that it would remain in people, and that whatever would happen, whether we have a totalitarian system or not, people would be better. No. After 2 years, but then I left to the States. It was still possible for some time, so I was in the States for 3 years, and then when I returned, everything was different. People were again afraid, again cooperative with the government, again entering the Communist Party, and so on and so on.
Right. Another thing I wanted to ask is how did life change before and after 1968 in Prague? What was different after that?
Yes, you know, the communist history in this country is long. It's
right.
Many years, and it has, I would say, at least three distinct periods. The first period, say roughly the 50s, was a period of a real red terror. Yes, when hundreds of people were executed, thousands, maybe 100,000 people were imprisoned, and it was, in these years, it was actually impossible to do anything in common. We could have read books or so, and maybe write something, but it was sheerly impossible to organize anything. And then came the 60s, which meant that the public, the the general conditions gradually improved since, I would say, 61 plus minus. So that in particular in the cultural sphere, there was, I think it was connected with a certain change of generations inside the Communist Party. The new people there on various levels. I was then working as craftsman at the technical university here, and we had gatherings which organized by the Communist Party, where the young people from the Communist Party were pretty much critical towards the situation in which the country was, namely the technical backwardness which just started then, the economic problems and so on. So, and it was a gradual improvement, so that shortly before, so that for example, there were Western movies, yes, big change. Then some books, the censorship on books was weakened, was somewhat softer. And so the atmosphere in the society generally, maybe because I was young, this is a different aspect of the view, but the atmosphere was generally rather positive because people saw that things are improving. It was not a time of freedom by no means, but nevertheless it was improving. And then in '68 itself, in the short period between spring and August, it was almost freedom. Yes, that is, frontiers were open, books were free, there were even new journals and so on. So it was almost freedom. After August, it was clear that this will be stopped. Not immediately. It lasted at least 1 year before the old, and then came the third period of communism, namely what people call normalization, which was rather sad. It was not terror. Yes, the imprisoned people were not so numerous. The penalties were not so high. Yes, and so, but it was very sad, very grey. Nothing happened, and it was so hopeless. And so this was a big change. Mm-hmm. And of course, in '68, the party leadership won a high esteem in the population. And in August, people were very enthusiastic and supported Dubček. And these people then, yes, disavowed themselves.
One more thing I wanted to talk about was Palach. And because again, I was talking with some acquaintances of mine, and a lot of them think that his deed was wrong because it was a suicide, because they think that he was weak, that he wanted to escape from the situation, like every other suicide, pretty much.
Show me a suicide who wants to escape from his situation by burning himself alive. I would like, really, of course people take pills or switch on gas, sometimes they shoot themselves. But burning yourself alive, no, but this is, if they want to believe it, let them kill, but he was clear in his message. He was afraid, he wanted to do, first he didn't want to end his life. These idiots are unable to we have to distinguish suicide. If during the war it happened many times that there were several people in some room and suddenly a live grenade fell in and somebody put his body on that grenade to protect other people from the blast. He was not a suicidal. He didn't want to end his life. He wanted to protect other people's life, and he offered his life. But suicidal is somebody who wants to end his life. The man who saved somebody from death by putting himself in the way of harm is not a suicidal. He's a hero.
You mentioned Dubček.
Mhm.
Now, I wanted to ask you, what do you think of this person? Because people seem to have different feelings about this man.
Yes.
Some say that he was a hero, some others say that he wasn't strong enough to cope with the situation.
That is, to be frank, a hero was he not,
Okay.
by no means. Then he became the first secretary because he was a sort of tabula rasa. He was unknown. He had no dirty past behind him, and so he was not so much dirtied during the 50s, and so he became the first secretary as a compromise between the Stalinists and the progressists, Eurocommunists. Then he was very sympathetic. He was living. He understood, or his surroundings understood, that if he had a chance against the resistance of the Stalinist party, he had to seek appui with the public. This is why they loosened the censorship and so on. And he was, in a sense, very popular. Then what he did after August was very sad and very disappointing. So I didn't know him then personally. So I was very critical toward him. Only after 90, I was 2 years, so to say, very close to him in the parliament. He was chairman of the parliament, and I was one of the vice chairmen. So we worked together very, very often, and I learned to appreciate some of his good sides. For example, he was sincere, he was frank, but he was a really devoted communist. Once, yes, I was then nobody, yes, but he was never. He was open-minded. Once I told him, "Why did you sign the Moscow Accords?" And he said, "What could have been done?" I said to him, "But you were not authorized to do it. You could have argued that you have not the authority to make that decision. That this belongs to the parliament." And this he didn't understand at all.
One more thing I wanted to ask was, what were the causes of Charta? Why did Charta appear in
The immediate trigger of Charta was a government action against a group of musicians, plastic people of the universe, who were, it was a rock group which my brother, well, he liked music, but he didn't understand that. But he was stuck by the fact that this group was put into the prison. I do not know whether everybody or not, but definitely there was a trial against them for being free, for being not obeying. And so he gathered a group of people, and they wrote a text of the Charter 77. So this was a certain immediate trigger why it was exactly in the end of 76 and the beginning 77. But of course it could be something else. What was the, let's say, ideological trigger was, what was the excuse for formulating Charter 77 was Helsinki Agreement, where was a chapter about human rights. And so the main idea of Charter 77 was to urge the government to obey its own rules, because they signed the Helsinki Agreement and they made a big noise about how it is good to recite such a thing and so on. And now they said, okay, you signed many things, but among them was human rights, and therefore we want you to keep it. And this was the problem for the government. Therefore they were saying that it was organized by West and that it was a subversion and so on.
I see. And how did the government react to Charta? Was it very strong in the reaction?
They reacted strongly. They tried to dishonest it as much as possible. They dishonest particular people. They arrested about 4 or 5 people. I do not know the historical details. And what was funny was that they wanted made a lot of people, groups in factories and in offices and so, to sign a proclamation that they are against Charter 77. But they never published it. They never allowed to read it to anybody. So some people say, I would not sign such a proclamation unless you show me the text. They never showed anybody the text. It wasn't published. So it was a very strange situation that people were urged to condemn something which they didn't know what it is about. So it was published in samizdat and distributed or so, but the government just didn't care about it. So it was a strange, and also they gathered a group of artists, intellectuals, actors, film actors and theater actors and so on. And they somewhat misguided them and led them to sign something that was later called anti-charter 77. And a lot of people signed it. Some of them claimed they didn't know what they are signing, and some of them just because of being afraid. And so it's a sensitive matter because it shows willingness of people to sign something which they would not agree with if they had the time and energy to think about it.
I see.